All right, let's dive into something you UPSC folks are going to need to know. MGNREGA.
Yeah, MGNREGA.
It's one of those things that's bound to show up on your exams, right?
Right?
So we're going deep today, going beyond those basic notes you've probably got. We're looking at a study from Down to Earth.
DTE.
Yeah, DTE. And they found some really interesting stuff, especially about those wage delays you always hear about.
Yeah, those delays are a big issue. And this DTE study, it really digs into why they happen. It goes way deeper than just knowing what MGNREGA is, you know?
Right, like it's not enough to just have the definition memorized.
No. The UPSC, they want you to analyze how effective is this program? What are the problems? What are the solutions?
Okay, so let's get into it. One thing that jumps out from this study is, well, it's kind of ironic.
Oh,
So MGNREGA is all about helping people in rural areas.
right.
Right. Guaranteed income, 100 days of paid work, that's the goal.
Right. The goal is to lift people out of poverty, empower rural communities.
Exactly. But then you see stats like only 29% of payments in 2021-22 were on time. Yeah. So how does that happen? Where's the disconnect?
Well, that's what's so interesting about this study. It points to some, I guess you could call them unexpected reasons for those delays.
Like what?
Take the Aadhaar-based payment system, for example.
ABPS.
ABPS, it was supposed to make things faster, get rid of corruption.
Yeah, going digital. You'd think that would speed things up.
Makes sense, right? But here's the thing. This study found that ABPS was only eligible for 43% of the workers.
Really?
Yeah. So that means a huge number of people are left out, leading to all sorts of delays, confusion about who gets paid what.
So the system meant to streamline things is actually causing more problems for some people.
Yeah, and it gets even worse. The study also found that ABPS sometimes doesn't even recognize legitimate workers.
So they're not getting paid at all.
Exactly. It's a good example of how hard it is to implement these big tech solutions, especially in a country as complex as India.
I bet you could write a whole UPSC essay on that, The unintended consequences of well-intentioned policies.
Oh, absolutely. It shows a deep understanding of these social programs, how they work in the real world.
How they don't work.
Right. And speaking of things not working, we can't forget about the budget itself. That plays a huge role in these delays.
Oh, yeah, the budget. This DTE study, they had some crazy findings about that. Like they said the MGNREGA budget needs to be 4 times bigger.
4 times higher, yeah.
Yeah.
To actually meet the demand for work, it's a huge gap.
Huge.
And it shows just how much tension there is between what the policy wants to do, these ambitious goals, and the actual resources they have. In 2021-22, the MGNREGA budget was only 0.41% of India's GDP.
Tiny.
Tiny. The study recommends bumping it up to at least 1.2%, maybe even 1.5% to really make a difference.
That's a big jump.
It is. And if
Okay.
you're studying for the UPSC, think about what that would mean, economically, politically. It would spark all sorts of debates, wouldn't it? About how we spend our money, what our priorities are.
Yeah, I think you're connecting the dots. MGNREGA, this program for rural workers, it's tied into the entire economy, the whole political system.
Exactly. And to get into the budget stuff a little deeper, we have to remember it's not just the central government paying for this.
Right.
The states contribute too.
It's like a team effort. So how does that work? Who pays for what?
Well, the central government, they take care of unskilled labor costs and 75% of the materials.
Okay.
Then the states cover the other 25% of the materials. So you see, if the central government is short on funds, it puts pressure on the states.
And that leads to more delays.
Exactly. Disagreements, slow transfers of money, and ultimately, it's the workers who suffer.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah, a chain reaction where the workers are at the very end.
And speaking of workers, this DTE study found something else really interesting, something kind of sensitive, actually. It's about caste.
Oh, this is a big one, especially if you're taking the UPSC mains exam, particularly the essay and ethics sections.
Right. So they found that these payment delays, they're even worse for workers in the other caste category.
Meaning those who aren't scheduled castes or scheduled tribes, they're waiting even longer to get paid.
So basically, even in a program that's supposed to help the most vulnerable, there's still inequality.
It seems that way, and the numbers are pretty clear. Only 33% of payments to other caste workers were made within that 7-day period.
7 days.
7 days, that's the rule. But for STs, it was 42% on time. And for SCs, 47%.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, how much do these existing social structures impact how the program actually works on the ground?
Yeah, it adds a whole new layer to thinking about MGNREGA. How effective is it? Who's really benefiting?
Exactly. And for those of you prepping for the UPSC, this highlights the link between social inequality, economic issues, and how policies get implemented.
So we've got all these things going on: payment delays, tech problems, budget issues, now caste inequality. It's starting to feel like MGNREGA, well, it's not the safety net it's supposed to be.
It's more like walking a tightrope.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And to really understand why, we need to dig into how the program itself works.
Okay, good idea. Let's do that.
So we were talking about how hard it is for some workers to actually get paid on time.
Yeah, and it's not like they get much if it's late.
Right.
This study found that they only get like 0.05% extra per day,
Per day.
and only after waiting 15 days.
Yeah, it's practically nothing. It really shows how disconnected the program is from, what it's supposed to do. Help workers, empower them.
But when they're constantly dealing with delays, getting paid late, it just makes them more vulnerable.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting for you UPSC folks. Think about the ripple effects.
Ripple effect?
Yeah, like imagine you're writing an essay on rural development in India.
Yeah.
You could talk about how these late payments, they don't just hurt individual families,
Right.
they affect the whole community. People have less money to spend, so the local economy suffers.
Yeah.
Kids might not be able to go to school. People might not be able to afford health care.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, and that's the kind of analysis that gets you noticed on the UPSC exam.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Right. And this study, it makes you think about labor rights, too.
Labor rights.
Yeah. Are these MGNREGA workers actually protected?
I mean, this study focused on payments,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much on how workers can complain if things go wrong.
Exactly. So how does that system even work?
Good question.
Well, on paper, MGNREGA has a whole system for complaints. It starts at the village level
Right.
with the gram panchayats, and it goes all the way up to the national level.
Wow.
Workers can complain online, through apps, even by writing letters.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It does, but, India is a huge country. Not everyone has internet access. And then there's all the bureaucracy.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
Right. So how effective is this system really? There have been reports, that complaints take forever to be addressed. Workers don't even know how to complain. Sometimes they're pressured to keep quiet.
That's not good.
No, it's not. It sounds like MGNREGA needs more transparency, more accountability.
Maybe they should get outside organizations involved.
That's a great point. Maybe civil society groups, independent monitors, they could help make sure workers' voices are actually heard.
Yeah, and their problems get solved.
And this is another key takeaway for the UPSC. It's not enough to have a program on paper. You need ways to make sure it actually works.
Accountability.
Accountability, that's what makes a policy successful.
So we've talked about the present, but to really understand MGNREGA, we need to look at the past too, right?
Absolutely. History is crucial for the UPSC.
This DTE article, it mentions how MGNREGA has changed over time.
It's had a long journey.
Okay, history lesson time. What were some of the big moments?
Well, it started as NREGA back in 2005, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act.
Yeah.
And the focus was on giving people jobs, 100 days of guaranteed work.
Okay.
But they didn't just want to hand out money. The goal was to build things. Roads, wells, ponds.
So it was about creating something lasting.
Exactly. Then in 2009, it became MGNREGA.
Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act.
To honor the Mahatma's vision for rural India.
Nice. So how did things change after that?
Well, the focus broadened. They started including things like drought prevention, planting trees, even some skills training.
So it wasn't just about manual labor anymore.
Right. And the wages went up, linked to inflation, and they tried to make payments more digital to cut down on corruption.
So it's a program that's constantly adapting.
It is. But like we've seen in this study, there are still a lot of problems.
Yeah, funding issues, implementation problems, inequality, bureaucracy.
All these things need to be fixed if MGNREGA is going to really make a difference.
So it's trying to juggle all these different goals.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting for the UPSC.
It's a microcosm of India's development. All the hopes, the struggles, the potential.
Exactly. And for anyone who wants to serve in the government, understanding MGNREGA is essential.
All right, so we've covered a lot, but there's still more to talk about, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We haven't even gotten into COVID's impact on MGNREGA, or how technology can be used to improve things, or what kind of reforms are needed.
Sounds like we need another deep dive. Okay, so we've talked about the history, the challenges, the inequalities, but we haven't really touched on COVID, have we?
No, we haven't. And that's a big one, especially for the UPSC.
Right. Like, how did MGNREGA deal with this huge disruption? I mean, the pandemic hit India pretty hard.
It did. But, in a way, MGNREGA was kind of ready for it.
Ready.
Think about it. Millions of migrant workers, they lost their jobs in the cities, had to go back to their villages, no income, no way to support themselves.
MGNREGA was there.
Exactly. It became a lifeline, guaranteed work even during a pandemic.
Wow, that's the kind of safety net you need in a crisis.
Absolutely. And the government actually increased the budget for MGNREGA because so many people needed it.
So it was a success.
It definitely helped, both in terms of giving people money and creating jobs in rural areas.
It's a good example, right, for other countries, too.
Yeah.
Having these programs in place can make a big difference when things go wrong.
For sure. It shows how adaptable MGNREGA is. It's not perfect, but it can change and adapt to new challenges.
Okay, so we've talked about the problems, but what about solutions? How can we make MGNREGA even better? Especially, for those UTSC answers.
Good question. Well, one area is technology. We talked about ABPS, the ATAR-based payment system.
Right, and it had some issues.
It did, but there's so much potential there. We could use technology to make everything more transparent, faster, easier for the workers.
Give me an example.
Imagine an app where workers can track their hours, their wages, everything. No more waiting around wondering when they'll get paid.
Yeah, cut out all that bureaucracy. That's the kind of thing UPSC examiners like to see. Practical solutions using technology.
Exactly. And we could also link MGNREGA with other programs.
Like that.
Skills training, entrepreneurship programs. Instead of just giving people jobs, help them build a future.
So it's not just about welfare anymore. It's about empowering people.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about accountability. We talked about the complaint system, but there needs to be more oversight.
Oversight.
Yeah, like social audits, independent monitoring, make sure the money is being spent properly, that the program is actually helping the people it's supposed to help.
It's about making the whole system more efficient, more fair.
Exactly. Good governance. That's what it comes down to. And for those of you studying for the UPSC, this is what you need to be thinking about. How can we improve these systems? How can we make them work better for everyone?
It's a challenge, for sure.
It is. But it's a challenge worth taking on. And who knows, maybe one of you listening will be the one to make MGNREGA even better.
Well, that's a great note to end on, I think. We've covered a lot of ground today about MGNREGA. We've looked at the history, the challenges, the potential solutions. Hopefully this is giving you some food for thought, especially if you're preparing for the UPSC exams.
Definitely. And don't forget, all this information comes from a really great article in Down to Earth DTE. Be sure to check it out for all the details.
And as always, we encourage you to do your own research, think critically, form your own opinions. That's what makes a great UPSC candidate and a well-informed citizen.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives and UPSC-focused content. We'll see you next time.